P102 Study Session 2 Structure and Types of Arguments. Introduction. In the previous study session, we pointed out that a proposition may not necessarily qualify as an argument. To determine whether a group of propositions or statements is an argument or not, therefore, we should ensure that an inference is drawn and a conclusion should be claimed to be true. But there are basically two different ways in which a conclusion of an argument may be supported by its premises. Namely, the premises may give total support to the conclusion of an argument. And two, the premises may support the conclusion only with some degree of probability. This distinction informs why arguments are categorized into two: deductive and inductive. Learning outcomes. When you have studied this session, you should be able to distinguish between deductive and inductive arguments. Point out if an argument is valid or invalid. Overview on deductive reasoning and inductive reasoning. Historically speaking, deductive reasoning can be traced back to the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle. Inductive reasoning, on the other hand, was developed by the famous British philosopher Francis Bacon and his successor J.S. Mill. In deduction, we infer particular from general truth, while in induction, we infer general from particular. Accordingly, a deductive argument makes the claim that its conclusion is supported by its premises conclusively. An inductive argument, in contrast, does not make such a claim. Therefore, if we judge that in some passage a claim or conclusiveness is being made, we treat the argument as deductive. If we judge that such a claim is not being made, we treat it as inductive. Since every argument either makes this claim of conclusiveness, explicitly or implicitly, or does not make it, every argument is either deductive or inductive. Copy et al., 2006, page 9. There are distinguishing features between deductive and inductive arguments. If we are confronted with an argument whose truth of its premises guarantees the truth of its conclusion, then that argument is said to involve in a deductive inference. In other words, a deductive inference succeeds only if its premises provide such absolute and complete support for its conclusion that it will be utterly inconsistent to suppose that the premises are true but the conclusion false. Of 2012, page 22. On the other hand, an argument is said to involve an inductive inference if it claims merely that the truth of its premise make it likely or probably not its conclusion is also true. This means that in an inductive argument, the premises do not give total support to the conclusion, but merely provide some grounds for the truth of their conclusions. The foregoing can be termed as the distinguishing features between deductive and inductive arguments. These features can be summarized below. 1. In a deductive argument, the premises conclusively or logically imply the conclusion. In an inductive argument, the premises only provide some probable grounds for the acceptance of the conclusion. 2. If the premises of a deductive argument provides conclusive grounds for the truth of the conclusion, then the argument is said to be valid. Inductive arguments cannot be valid, but can be strengthened or weakened by additional premises. 3. If a deductive argument is valid, then it is impossible for its premises to be true and its conclusion false. It is possible for the conclusion of an inductive argument to be false even when the premises are true. Of 2012, page 23. The following are examples of deductive arguments. 1. All humans are mortal. Aristotle is human. Therefore, Aristotle is mortal. 2. All humans are animals. All animals are mortal. Therefore, all humans are mortal. 3. All Nigerians are Africans. All Africans are colored. Therefore, all Nigerians are colored. 4. In order to study in the United Kingdom, you have to develop yourself in the field of philosophy. And in order to develop yourself in the field of philosophy, you have to read the works of Plato and Aristotle. Therefore, in order to study in the United Kingdom, you have to read the works of Plato and Aristotle. The following are examples of inductive arguments. 1. John is human and is mortal. Peter is human and is mortal. James is human and is mortal. Therefore, probably, all humans are mortal. 2. Kennedy was an orator and was a good leader. Churchill was an orator and was a good leader. Babangida was an orator. Therefore, Babangida will probably be a good leader. 3. The cows have kidneys and have lungs. All horses have kidneys and have lungs. All human beings have kidneys and have lungs. Therefore, all animals with kidneys have lungs. 4. All politicians are criminals and will eventually die. All soldiers are criminals and will eventually die. Therefore, probably, all men are criminals and will eventually die. Truth, validity, and soundness of an argument. Earlier in this study session, we pointed out that in deductive arguments, the premises provide conclusive grounds for the truth of the conclusion. A statement or proposition is said to be true if it expresses what really is the case, and is false if it does not conform with the situation it expresses. More lucidly, truth is the attribute of a statement or proposition that asserts what really is the case. Therefore, when the premises provide conclusive or incontrovertible grounds for the truth of the conclusion, the argument is said to be valid. This shows that there is some connection between truth and validity of an argument. However, the term validity is applicable only to deductive arguments, and to say that a deductive argument is valid is to say that it is not possible for its conclusion to be false if its premises are true. Thus, a deductive argument is valid if its premises are true. Its conclusion must be true. Copy et al., 2006, page 9. But if the premises of a deductive argument fail to guarantee the truth of its conclusion, the argument is said to be invalid. Here, it is instructive to show the contrast between truth and validity. If, for instance, I assert that Nigeria's premier university is situated in Ibadan, the capital of Oyo State, I assert what really is the case. What is true if I had claimed that the premier university is in Abuja? My assertion would not be in accord with the real world. Therefore, it will be false. It can be gleaned, therefore, that truth and falsity are attributes of individual propositions or statements. Validity and invalidity are attributes of arguments. Copy et al., 2006, page 12. Copy et al., 2006, page 12, explicate further on the relations between truth and validity by pointing out the following. Just as the concept of validity cannot apply to single propositions, the concept of truth cannot apply to arguments. Of the several propositions in an argument, some or all may be true, and some or all may be false. But the argument as a whole is neither true nor false. Propositions, which are statements about the world, may be true or false. Deductive arguments, which consist of inferences from one set of propositions to other propositions, may be valid or invalid. With 7 illustrative arguments, Copy et al. 2006, from page 13 to 14, shows that there are many possible combinations of true and false premises and conclusions in both valid and invalid arguments, implying the following. 1. An argument may be valid even when its conclusion and one or more of its premises are false. And 2. That the validity of an argument depends only on the relation of the premises to the conclusion. In other words, the truth or falsity of an argument's conclusion does not by itself determine the validity or invalidity of that argument. And also, the fact that an argument is valid does not guarantee the truth of its conclusion. The illustrative arguments can be represented thus. 1. Some valid arguments contain only true propositions, that is, true premises and a true conclusion. All terrestrial beings live on Earth. All humans are terrestrial beings. Therefore, all humans live on Earth. 2. Some valid arguments contain only false propositions, false premises and a false conclusion. All cyclopes have dark skin. All flying horses are cyclopes. Therefore, all flying horses have dark skin. This argument is valid because if its premises were true, its conclusion will have to be true also, even though we know that in fact both the premises and the conclusion of these arguments are false. 3. Some invalid arguments contain only true propositions, that is, all their premises are true and their conclusions are true as well. If I bagged a bachelor's degree from the University of Ibadan, then I will be a graduate. I do not have a degree from the University of Ibadan, therefore, I am not a graduate. The true conclusion of this argument does not follow from its true premises. The fact that I do not have a degree from the University of Ibadan does not presuppose that I am not a graduate. 4. Some invalid arguments contain only true premises and have a false conclusion. This is illustrated by an argument exactly like the previous example. In form, change only enough to make the conclusion false. If Adebola Ekanuola bagged the bachelor's degree from the University of Ibadan, then he will be a graduate. He does not have a degree from the University of Ibadan, therefore he is not a graduate. The premises of this argument are true, but its conclusion is false. This above example underscores our point that it is impossible for the premises of a valid argument to be true and its conclusion to be false. 5. Some valid arguments have false premises and a true conclusion. All spiders belong to the cat family. All tigers are spiders. Therefore, tigers belong to the cat family. The conclusion of this argument is true and may be validly inferred from these two premises, both of which are wildly false. 6. Some invalid arguments also have false premises and a true conclusion. All arachnids have wings. All scorpions have wings. Therefore, all scorpions are arachnids. From examples 5 and 6 taken together, it can be inferred that the validity or invalidity of an argument does not depend on whether it has false premises and a true conclusion. 7. Some invalid arguments, of course, contain all false propositions, that is, false premises and a false conclusion. All arachnids have wings. All scorpions have wings. Therefore, all arachnids are scorpions. An argument is said to be sound if that argument is valid and has all its premises as true. On the contrary, an argument is unsound if the premises fail to establish the truth of its conclusion. Thus, the conclusion of a sound argument obviously must be true, and only a sound argument can establish the truth of its conclusion. If a deductive argument is not sound, that is, if the argument is not valid or if not all its premises are true, it fails to establish the truth of its conclusion, even in fact the conclusion is true. Copy et al., 2006, page 15. Now, let's illustrate the difference between sound and unsound arguments with examples. 1. All elephants are herbivorous. All herbivores live on land. Therefore, all elephants live on land. 2. All university graduates are lawyers. All lawyers are soothsayers. Therefore, all university graduates are soothsayers. The first example is a sound argument, while the second is unsound because all the statements in the argument are false, though the argument is valid. Study session summary. In this study session, we pointed out the distinguishing features between deductive and inductive arguments. You learned that if an argument whose truth of its premises guarantees the truth of its conclusion, then that argument involves a deductive inference. In other words, the conclusion of a deductive argument is claimed to follow from the premises with necessity, and a valid deductive argument as one in which conclusion is necessarily true if the premises are true. An inductive argument, on the other hand, is an argument whose conclusion has some degree of probability, but for which the claim of necessity is not made. We went on to discuss the relations between the validity or invalidity of deductive arguments and the truth or falsity of propositions. End of study session 2. Thank you for listening.